I had to make the difficult decision to remove 13th Colony Double Oak from my 2023 Bourbon of the Year list. If you want to hear why, then stick around. So first off, a couple of disclaimers. This topic is too sensitive and too important for me to leave anything out, so I will be reading a lot of my correspondence that I had between myself and the distillery word for word from the teleprompter, so bear with me. You also need to know that I still love 13th Colony Double Oak, and I will continue to support the brand, but the lack of disclosure and unwillingness to answer simple questions compels me to include a different bottle that has been 100% open and honest with the public in my 2023 Bourbon of the Year list. So if you've been paying attention, you know that on January the 5th, 2024, I released my 2023 Bourbons of the Year list. I personally check all of my YouTube comments, and a viewer under the name @KillerFungus started commenting and replying to comments asking what people thought about the controversy surrounding the 13th Colony brand. He suggested they do not make their own whiskey and that they have been accused of adulterating their whiskey to make it taste as good as it does. I began arguing with this viewer and others that were making similar comments because I believed that these were malicious rumors that had been started by whiskey trolls. I argued that their bottle states that they produce the product and that labeling laws would prevent them from having this on the back label if they did not distill their own whiskey. I argued that they have confirmed to me that they use a column still, charred and toasted barrels, and that there was nothing about the flavor of the whiskey that could not be explained by these factors, so adulteration didn't make sense. And I also argued that the risk of financial and criminal ramifications of having committed the crimes these people were accusing them of made it extremely unlikely that these rumors could be true. I ended up Googling the controversy and found a blog post. The thing that concerned me was the blog post appeared to show a stainless steel pot still. I'd like to give credit to Mike and Mike from Whiskey Essentials for that. I knew the flavor of the whiskey could not have been produced on that still, so I started to look into the accusations. It turns out I was wrong on multiple accounts, and I am publicly apologizing to @KillerFungus and anybody else that I argued with in my comments. I will give you the full details. So here's the story. On January the 9th, 2023, so over a year ago, a representative from 13th Colony reached out to me and offered me some media samples to review their product. On January the 14th, 2023, the bottles arrived. I received a bourbon small batch, a rye small batch, and a 2-ounce sample of the 13th Colony Double Oak Batch 1. On January the 16th, I sent my first round of questions to the distillery. I asked, did you intentionally leave the word straight off of the label? Because I thought it was odd that it didn't say it was a straight bourbon or a straight rye. I also asked what type of still they use. The representative responded that the current label was produced under a different leadership team, and I quote, and they were, and I quote, not sure if it was intentionally left off or not, that there was a new label that was in the works and that it would include the word straight. So I took that at face value and moved on. Full disclosure, I liked their whiskey so much that on January 31st, 2023, I asked them to sponsor the podcast. They politely declined by saying, and I quote, that is not part of our strategic marketing plan for the year. If you want to dismiss all of this as me crying over sour grapes, I respect your right to do so, although given the timeline, that would not make a whole lot of sense. So I did not produce my review of the whiskeys they sent me until March 22nd, 2023, where I gave them a glowing review because, as I mentioned, I did really like the product. On January 5th, 2024, after announcing they were one of my 5 from my Bourbons of the Year list, I reached back out to get answers about these accusations, and this is what happened. I stated that there were rumors of sourcing and adulteration and asked, and I quote, does the distillery have any information about this controversy? On January the 8th, 2024, the representative replied and said, and I quote, "All of our whiskeys are straight. We do not use any additives, coloring, or flavoring in our whiskey." Regarding the sourcing, the representative said, and I quote, "We clearly state on our website that we distill our spirits and also, due to a sharp increase in demand, source our specific mash bill. Our distillery is celebrating its 15th year anniversary this year, but our growth in the past 2 years has exceeded expectations." This triggered a number of questions for me, so I replied on January the 8th, 2024, with the following questions. Do you have a column still, a pot still, or both? I saw some pictures online of a stainless steel pot still. On January 16th, you said that you had a column still. And that was from 2023, my original email to that person. You said due to a sharp increase in demand, you had to source your specific mash bill, and you reference your growth in the last 2 years, that it exceeded expectations. Does this mean that you've only been getting new make whiskey from an outside source for the last 2 years? My next question, is the whiskey in the 13th Colony Double Oak 100% from your distillate, 100% distillate from an outside source, or a blend of your own make and someone else's? Next question. Do you get new make whiskey and run it through your in-house still to make it your own the way that Bourbon does? Next question. There's sourcing and there's contract distilling. The difference being whether you are taking what somebody else is making or another distillery is making your whiskey to your specifications exclusively for you. You said you started to, and I quote, source our specific mash bill. Can you confirm that the liquid was not just sourced, but contract distilled, and this other producer is not selling that same liquid to another producer or using it for their own production? Next question. Bardstown Bourbon Company has a program where they allow you to bring your distillery team in to work alongside theirs when they do a contract distillation run for you. Can you say whether or not this other producer had any of your distillery staff present when that was taking place? Next question. Your bottle does not have a state of distribution on it, except that it says produced and bottled by, and it has your address, which includes the state of Georgia. Is this product 100% made in Georgia? Is the other source or sources of this new make from outside of the state of Georgia? Next question. If there is whiskey from multiple states, do you plan to disclose all states of distillation? I included in quotes, I believe this is a TTB label requirement. Next question. Can you say whether you are getting this new make from just one other source or multiple? Next question. Can you disclose who the other producer/producers are? My final question. Do the answers to these questions apply to your regular small batch bourbons and ryes too, or only the double oak? The representative didn't respond immediately, which I thought was odd since the speed of response was always very fast up until I sent this long list of probing questions. I sent a follow-up email on January the 11th, 2024, asking how much time the representative needed because I was going to do a piece on this either way, and I thought that it was in the distillery's best interest to get the truth out there. The representative replied the next day on January the 12th, 2024 and said, and I quote, "We have been transparent regarding the fact that we distill spirits with our column still. You're welcome to come and check it out. And we also bring in our specific mash bill, which is necessary to meet growing demand. Details regarding our relationships and contracts with partners is not something we can legally share. All of our whiskeys are straight. Our bourbon, rye, and double oak are aged over 4 years. It is not a TTB requirement to include, but it is clear that some of our customers want to see this designation, so it will be added to our labels going forward. The label on our products is compliant with federal regulations. We absolutely never use any additives, coloring, or flavoring in our whiskey. We believe the aging process and our southern Georgia climate makes the difference in our flavor profile. So 100% of barrels are aged in our facility." This was a copy and paste from an earlier email, which I thought was interesting. It's almost like this is kind of the company line. When everybody sends an email about what's going on, they kind of deflect and go, it doesn't matter who makes the whiskey because The real secret sauce is that we age it here in southern Georgia. This is what kind of led me to my difficult decision. It might be possible that their contract for the liquid that they're purchasing includes a non-disclosure agreement. That's pretty common in certain situations. But keep in mind, those clauses are more common when you are a non-distiller producer, because the seller doesn't want the consuming public to know that your whiskey could be an alternative to their own or to the other customers that they're selling whiskey to. So they want to keep it secret that this liquid is effectively the same whiskey. So that's when you typically see non-disclosure agreements. It would be odd for a third party who was truly distilling 13th Colony's mash bill to their specifications exclusively for them to put in a non-disclosure agreement saying you're not allowed to tell anybody who did this for you, because there wouldn't really be any negative ramification if they did. Although it's not impossible, the other producer may not want people to know that their whiskey doesn't have enough demand to keep the distillery running at full capacity. But I will tell you that that is less common of a clause whenever you are contract distilling versus an actual non-distiller producer buying somebody else's product. All this leads me to believe that the claim that they were having their specific mash bill produced, which would be an indication of contract distillation, was marketing puffery, meant to kind of throw off the public to the fact that they were buying somebody else's whiskey. My first question about the still, the representative says that they have a column still, but the photo is actually of a hybrid still. So a hybrid still is kind of a pot still on the bottom and a column still on the top, and it has plates in the column. And it does create different temperature zones so that it works. The way that you extract the ethanol in the process works very much like a column still. But they don't produce the same flavors as a true column still, and that's because they're running sessions, and the distiller's beer after the fermentation process gets poured into the pot at the bottom, and that allows the grain solids to come in direct contact with the heat source. So when you're making bourbons and rye, typically you use a hammer mill that's going to pound that grain into what's effectively flour. So there's no way to strain the grain solids out after the cooking and fermentation process. Those grain solids go directly into the still. And this is why bourbons that are produced on pot stills have a very different flavor, because those grain solids come in contact with the heat source and burn. And that's why I'm pretty confident that the whiskey that I'm tasting in this bottle couldn't have been made on the still that I saw the photo of, because it wouldn't take like this. And it is possible that a PR person wouldn't necessarily know the difference between a pot hybrid and a column still. But I do think that the 13th Colony whiskey I've tasted could not have been made on the still that I saw the photo of. The representatives seem to try to indicate that the last 2 years of demand is what required them to start going outside for distillation, but refused to answer the question regarding how long they had been buying outside distillate. And the representative refused to disclose if the double oak was all their own distillate, if it was somebody else's, or if it was a blend of two sources. And that's interesting, because in another email she had told me that this year's double oak was going to be 10 years old. But when I asked about contract distillation, she talked about the need for it over the last 2 years. And so that would indicate to me that since they don't have anything in bottle that's under 4 years old, according to her own admission, that they may very well have outside distillate that's aging, but they probably had not bottled any of it. And she just didn't want to admit that that whole thing that she did with, the last 2 years of demand requires that we go outside. That was just subterfuge. They've been buying outside liquid for a lot longer than 2 years. And I feel like the way that they wrote that is purposely misleading. The representative didn't address any question that I had that would have established whether or not they were contract distilling or just sourcing other people's liquid. And the only excuse that they gave for not answering the question was that they are restricted legally, right? Which would be a non-disclosure agreement. But there's no way that a non-disclosure agreement would have a clause in there that says you can't say whether or not the liquid you bought from us was made exclusively for you or not. It would just say you can't say what the source of the liquid is. That to me seemed kind of like a cop-out. The representative refused to say that they, whether or not they got new make from more than one source outside of the distillery, which again would not be a restriction of a non-disclosure agreement. The representative refused to say which brand lines they were using outside distillate for. And there's no scenario where that would be in a non-disclosure agreement, where it'd say, like, you can't disclose that you got it from us, and you can't disclose which one of your brands have our liquid in it. It wouldn't say that. That's just not true. Once they get the liquid, there's a restriction on what you can say about the other distillery, but not what they can do with it. And the representative reiterated that kind of the secret sauce was the aging facility, and it wasn't a question I asked. And so all of that just really seemed super suspect. Probably the most troubling part about this interchange was that the representative totally dodged the question about the state or states of distillation. And this couldn't be a requirement of their non-disclosure agreement, because disclosing what the state of distillation is a federal requirement by labeling law. So no one's going to put that in their NDA. So there's no reason for them not to share that information unless they thought that it was going to run counter to what they've been telling the public, and that they would be embarrassed by telling the full truth about it. Any use of straight bourbons from two different states when you're making a batch prohibits the use of the term straight. So I don't know if y'all caught that, but when you are submitting for formula and label approvals, there's different classes. 101 is for bourbon and 141 is for straight bourbon. But that raises other questions, because that would mean that the planned addition of the word straight on their new label would be illegal. Or the exclusion of the true states of distillation was illegal. Because if they left the word straight off of the original label because they knew it had two states, but they didn't disclose what both states were, that's illegal. If they have two states and they disclose two states, they can't put the word straight on the label. So one way or the other, they either have an illegal label or they're planning to release an illegal label. And in either case, the labels are not compliant and are purposely designed to mislead the public about what is actually in the bottle, if the case is that this distillate is coming from two different states. So in conclusion, regarding the claim that they adulterate their whiskey, I see zero evidence that they adulterate their whiskey. I also would like to say emphatically that I think their whiskey is delicious. I love their whiskey. I still did put forth the effort to source my own bottle of the 13th Colony Double Oak Batch 2 because I loved it. And I will also admit that I finished the bottle of the small batch bourbon that I had on my shelf this week because I do like the whiskey. I do not have a problem with non-distiller producers. I am one with the Prideful Goat. And so I understand these issues more than most. But I do have a problem when brands try to market their product is something that it's not. And I will also say that through this process, I learned that the words produced and bottled by have no meaning. I thought that you couldn't say produced and bottled by unless you were the distiller of the liquid. And a viewer named Greg Flynn disabused me of that misunderstanding. I did the research. Greg, you were right. And I would like to publicly apologize to you as well. And after going through this process, I suspect that whoever's making the decisions over at 13th Colony doesn't know that the whiskey enthusiast community would be more accepting of their brand if they would just disclose everything that they were allowed to disclose, except for the few things that the NDA prohibits them from disclosing, which would probably only be the name of the distillery that's making their distillate. And we would all be okay with it. We would still love the whiskey. There are plenty of brands that source that everybody loves. But those brands are open and honest about their sourcing, states of distillation, what is in each bottle, right? There's no question about whether or not this bottle has all their distillate or this one is a blend of someone else's distillate and all that stuff, because we as consumers understand that that's part of the business growth process. And if you are from 13th Colony and you're watching this, I want to encourage you, stop all of this subterfuge. Just answer the questions, be 100% honest. I totally get that your NDA says that you're not allowed to say who your distillery partner is, and that's fine. But just be honest with the people, and I think things will work out better for you. There were just too many indications as I went through this process that there was a lack of disclosure and that it was intentional. And I just don't feel like it's right for me to be putting their product in a best of list when there's so many other products out there that came out last year that are amazing, and those people are 100% forthright with the public. So for this reason, I am removing 13th Colony Double Oak from my Bourbon of the Year list for 2023, and I am replacing it with Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. This bottle was one that really surprised me. I know it got a little bit of hate out there, but in my perception, I did a review on this. If you want to see my thoughts, you can see it. It's excellent whiskey. It's got a good bit of balanced oak on it. It's got a cherry flavor that I normally don't get on Maker's Mark that I really, really enjoyed. So not only is it excellent, but we also, as whiskey lovers, need to acknowledge that this was a major departure from Maker's Mark's normal business practice. They will rotate their barrels in their warehouse so that all the barrels taste almost exactly the same. And that's why they've never really done single barrel programs. And that's why they had to come up with the wood finishing series that come in this shape bottle to do anything special for whiskey enthusiasts, because there's no reason to do a single barrel program when every one of your barrels tastes exactly like all of the others because you rotated them and made sure that that was the case. So as a result, whiskey lovers want to taste something that's higher proof, and they want to taste something that has some extra age on it, which Maker's Mark never did because they aged everything to an exact profile. This was the first departure of that process for them. And I think whiskey lovers should applaud that move by Maker's Mark and encourage them to continue to do so. So I hope that you enjoyed this content. I hope that I was clear. I hope that I shared information in an accurate way that doesn't mischaracterize anything on 13th Colony side. I probably could have gone back one more time and tried to get honest answers out of the representative from 13th Colony again. But I was just so frustrated by the delay in response to my very simple and straightforward questions, and the lack of attention to detail whenever that individual replied to me. It seemed very obvious to me that they were trying not to answer questions, and the only reason would be to keep the truth from getting out there. And once you decide you're going to keep the truth from whiskey enthusiast world, I got to make moves like this. So as always, I promise to do a free giveaway on all of my episodes. And I have already given away a Bourbon of the Year sample pack. But what we're going to do is we're going to give another Bourbon of the Year sample pack. But this time we are going to replace the Double Oak with the Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. So you're going to get a 1 ounce sample of the Elijah Craig C923, a 1 ounce sample of the Jack Daniel's 12 year, 1 ounce of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged, 1 ounce of Michter 10 year from 2023, and 1 ounce of the Russell's Reserve Single Rickhouse C and F. All you have to do to get your giveaway is to like, subscribe, ring the bell, comment, and go to this video description and fill out the link for the giveaway. I'll run a randomizer, post it publicly, and I will reach out to the winner and ship them their samples absolutely for free. If you enjoyed this content and you want to think about supporting this channel, you should check out our Patreon. We've got a lot of member benefits, things that you would not be able to get on your own as a whiskey enthusiast. There's a link in the video description below for you to check that out. We have merchandise on our website, and I promise you, if you go to bourbonrealtalk.com and you go to the shop, you're going to see plenty of things that you feel like you can't live without as a whiskey lover, so check that out. And I am also a real estate agent, so my real estate business has been subsidizing this channel since its inception. And if you need residential real estate services in the Dallas or Houston metro areas, please click the link in the video description below and reach out to me. And that is all I have for you today. If this is your first time tuning in, I'd love to tell you a little bit about our show philosophy. We're all about bringing people together around bourbon, and that is something that's personally important to me because I lost a loved one to suicide. And after my brother's death and talking with some of his friends, I realized that he had lost a lot of his social connections. And I saw whiskey creating social connections, and I thought, maybe if I can get you connected to whiskey, the whiskey will do the rest of the job and get you connected to others. And so that's why we started Bourbon Real Talk. But if you're going to foster connections, you need a forum. And we formed a Bourbon Real Talk community, which is a free Facebook-based forum. You can go join. There's no whiskey trolls in there. Lots of great things going on. People giving out samples, educating each other, getting together. Lots of really good positive things. And part of the reason why we started our own forum was because there is a lot of negativity out there in the online whiskey world. and that's from the Whiskey Trolls. And those Whiskey Trolls show a lot of hate to strangers online, but they taught us a valuable lesson, and that is if they can hate strangers online, we can love strangers online. And that's why we end every episode the same way, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you're unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you, and I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. Cheers.